and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast, the post-tax day episode. Hopefully you got your taxes in because they were due yesterday. And we got a fantastic tax refund. They didn't give us any money back, they being the government. They actually gave us a whole other person as a loan. They're here for one episode, but I am Illeagle 86. I'm joined by Techtic and Nerdbomber. And this week we are lucky enough to be joined by our Patreon producer, Mr. Loyd Weldy. Loyd, first time on the show. First time caller, long time listener, as you just said. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Super happy to have you here. We love having guests on the show. Nerdbomber, it's okay having you here. I don't know. It's the same.
It is worth mentioning, he was not provided to us by the U.S. government.
Right. We should circle back on that joke and say that he's here of his own accord. This is not a hostage situation of any kind. He chose to be here, and we're so glad that he did. And tax-wise, let's not even get into it. It's over. It came and went. You did your taxes. You get it. I just look for little signposts near when we release the episodes to say, hey, this thing happened. And this week, it happened to be tax day. So, again, hopefully you did your taxes. And hopefully you're excited for another great episode of the Online Warriors podcast. We're going to be talking Murderbot today, which this is very exciting for me, having actually mini What Are You Up To Wednesday update. Just finished book 4 of the Murderbot Diaries.
Fantastic timing.
Well, especially I feel like we talked about the announcement of the show. Then you went off and read the books, and now we got the trailer. Look at that. Perfect timing.
Yeah. I prepared, and I again, mini offshoot here, but I think what I'm going to be doing is, I believe, and someone can fact check me on this if they want to, they're making a movie about The Running Man, which is a Stephen King book that I've owned for a long time and never read. And I think Glenn Powell's going to be in it. So that may or may not be true. But I think I'm going to do the same thing. When we see like the first picture from it, I'm going to be like, I got to go read that book. And then when the trailer hits, I'll be like, I read the book. I know what's going on. Anyways, we're going to be
Straight
talking
up market
about
research.
That's right. We're going to be talking Star Wars, and in particular with Andor on the very near horizon. We're going to be talking about an interview that Tony Gilroy gave to Business Insider, and one of the more interesting projects that he talked about that he says is in the works at Disney for Star Wars. And we're going to be talking about Marathon, which, no, I have not run a marathon. Probably never will, actually. No, we're of course going to be talking about Marathon, the new Bungie game coming September 23rd. So, jam-packed show, a lot to get into. I am going to circle back to Murderbot first because I'm just very excited about it. And, I actually did, we got a trailer for this. That's what the news topic is here. Before we get into any of that, Lloyd, a couple questions for you. One, Apple TV Plus. Where are you at on Apple TV Plus? Because we've talked about it a lot on this show. It's, I think, a kind of divisive streaming service. So I want to know whether you have it, whether you do or you don't, what your feelings are on it.
Great timing. I just got Apple Plus maybe last month. Been watching Severance, catching up. So I'm very bullish on Apple Plus.
Yeah, very good timing for you. And I assume you got Apple TV Plus in order to watch Severance. We have all, I think, watched all of Severance here. Fantastic show. We won't get into spoiler town right now, but very excited for you to watch that. I think we've all also watched Silo, at least the first season. I did not go on with season 2. I actually don't know Nerdbomber and Techtic if you guys did.
Oh, we did.
But of course, Ted Lasso also on there. Defending Jacob is a great show on Apple TV Plus. They got a lot of stuff and not a lot of advertising. You've listened to this show. You know what our stance is on Apple TV Plus. Once again, we're back here with a trailer from Apple TV Plus where it seems like they may have a chance to, I don't want to say turn it around because I think they're doing just fine, but draw in more people with what looks like a bona fide crowd pleaser. So as we have discussed on the show now a few times, Murderbot Diaries is a book series, winner of Hugo and Nebula Awards from Martha Wells, 4 novellas, and I believe 3 full-length novels. I haven't gotten to the novels yet, but certainly an IP that is ripe for the plucking, and of course, one of the streaming services is going to come along and grab it. This trailer does, I think, a lot of great things and a couple of not great things. Let's get into the great things first. It looks like the thing that maybe most excited me about this trailer, and Nerdbomber Techtic, you guys, I think, have read the books. Lloyd, have you read these books?
No, I'm kind of sold on the premise from listening to you guys talk about it, but I haven't read them. Yeah,
so all very short, which I think I've mentioned on the show before, but it's really great how short they are. So definitely recommend. But one of the, I guess, core tenets of the book or the book series is you've got this SecBot who has hacked his programming. They get into that right away in the trailer. But in particular, what it looks like they may focus on in a very fun way is the fact that Murderbot loves watching entertainment media, as he puts it, and he specifically loves watching a show called The Rise and Fall of Sanctuary Moon, which comes up at various points in the books. And I mean, they're not like, they're going all in on that aspect of it for the show. They're getting actual,
and that part's
kind of big name people to be in the fake show within the show. I think that's great.
Like, I'm hoping this comes out, the first season does well, and then while we're waiting for season 2, they release like a season 1 of Sanctuary Moon, just for us to watch.
It'd be like, what was that like side movie that was in The Office? It was like Project Midnight. It'd be like that.
Oh, Threat Level Midnight.
Threat Level Midnight, yes.
I like that they're focusing on that. Certainly in most other respects, very classically created sci-fi action comedy for all intents and purposes, which of course I think it is fair to say is going to live and die by the talents of Alexander Skarsgård, who is a fantastic actor. He was recently in Succession, but he's been in a bunch of other things. So I really have no doubt in his talent.
But...
Oh, there's a but.
There's a but. As like a physical appearance, I was stoked to see that he was cast as the Murderbot. When I read through these books, that was not the voice. His voice is very, as the kids say, it's giving Lightning McQueen. And I hate that.
So I kind of see what you mean.
Listen back to it and think Lightning McQueen. That's all you can hear.
I think this is a challenge. There's other book series and other IPs that have been mined for television that have this same problem. A lot of Murderbot diaries, in particular because of the complexity of a lot of the hacking sort of things that the Murderbot is doing, a lot of it is very, very driven by internal monologue. And dialogue, while present, is often secondary. So what his inner voice is critical. And of course, as you're reading it, you are going to make that inner voice whatever you want it to be. I actually think this is pretty close, but I think you're touching on or pointing to something that does alarm me a little bit. I worry about, the Murderbot Diaries is certainly, I think, something that has a comedic undertone, in particular dark comedy.
But it's not supposed to be this funny?
I'm worried they're leaning too hard into
the funny
humor.
Was supposed to remain in his head.
Yeah, like the cool thing about the Murderbot Diaries is that I feel like Murderbot is in very serious situations, dire straits at all times, and the sarcastic quips add the humor, but the general vibe of things going on around him is usually like dangerous and not funny. And even if you look at the supporting cast, a lot of them all have comedy backgrounds. And
yeah.
I don't think it's going to be the same tone as the books. And that's not saying it's going to be a bad show, but it's just different from what I expected.
And in the scene that they showed in particular, I believe in that specific scene, someone had just either got really badly injured or died. And they're all like,
that's right.
Yuck, yuck, yuck.
Well, yeah, for me, the touch point is Deadpool. I feel like this show has a risk of trying to go into Deadpool territory where, like, they didn't show any fourth wall breaking directly, but I feel like it's going to fourth wall-y. And
he's a superhero and is not afraid of death. This is a Murderbot who's surrounded by normal people who are afraid of death.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily dooms it, but it is something that I noticed. Now, Loyd, you have a unique perspective here because we have all, mined the source material. We have the ins and outs. We're of course going to come into this with preconceived opinions, which unfortunately I probably should have gone to you first because now we have assaulted you with those opinions. But as an outside viewer looking at this, I guess I'm particularly curious if you feel that it is kind of white noise blending in with other stuff, or if it, brings some appeal to you in terms of being at all unique.
I think it's definitely got some appeal. I think it's kind of a new trope, the wake up and keep it a secret trope. I think that's very exciting, and I think that'll be good. But you're right, I didn't really get any kind of indication that it was meant to be in a serious environment.
Have you seen...
The book had that dissonance. It didn't come through in the trailer.
Have you seen the movie Chappie? Because I was told when I was explaining this book to someone that that's what Chappie is. I haven't seen Chappie myself. Has anyone?
I didn't see Chappie.
Dang.
No, I'm not a huge Neil Blomkamp person, but I haven't heard a whole lot about it. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the touch point for me, without even having read the books, if you were to look at the covers of these books, like you can Google it right now, look at the covers of these books, and then watch this trailer, there's a very clear disconnect. Like, I think there's a reason for that. I think we're seeing a lot of media try pretty desperately to pivot away from, these very dark and brooding, blue filtered, like things like Justice League, where everything is dark and brooding and all that. Like, I can understand wanting to go for a more brightly colored Guardians of the Galaxy kind of vibe. I just don't know that that's staying true to what the source material is. And the source material certainly contains comedy, but it's not the main point of the books to me. Like, and Techtic, Nerdbomber, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, there's a lot of internal conflict in the books, and there's a lot of jokey, like, oh no, I'm feeling an emotion kinds of things, but there's also a search for truth and a search for meaning that I think is like the real underlying, if there is a message to these books, or a quest for the main character, it's that. So I don't want that to get washed out.
Like, maybe the trailer is just leaning into the comedy to get people in the door, because I know, like, the Murderbot Diaries is very popular amongst like sci-fi readers and nerdy people. But if you're just a normal person who's never, like, there are a lot of people, the statistic always startles me every time, but like, I think it's like 1 in 5 Americans have read a book this year, which is not something I can fathom, but like, that's the truth. And so you have a lot of people who don't even know these books exist. So maybe the trailer is just like kind of punching up the fun comedy side of it to get people in the door, but then it's going to be a little bit more grounded once you actually get into the series.
But I hate that. Like, you may very well be right, but what you basically just said is Apple TV Plus is dangling something shiny in front of a child, and like bright colors. Come look at this.
I mean,
like,
think about Shrinking. I don't know, Loyd, have you watched Shrinking? I know you.
Another great show. Yeah, it's a great show.
So it's one of those things where, like, I feel like the trailer kind of sold me on more of Scrubs-esque level of comedy. And I'm not saying that Scrubs doesn't have very heartfelt, tender moments, but I feel like Shrinking is a lot more emotionally grounded than Scrubs. Like, it comes at you fast with trauma, basically, in that show. And I don't think that's what I necessarily got out of the trailer.
I'm glad you brought that up as an example, because per Apple TV's portfolio, they have demonstrated that they do pretty good at balancing the comedic with the heartfelt moments. So I tend to agree with you, Nerdbomber, that this is probably just goofy trailer making, and they're going to do it justice.
I mean, even think about Ted Lasso and the way it was initially marketed, was just kind of like this. I mean, it literally was a character from a commercial that they turned into an entire TV show, but they kind of originally marketed it as, look at this goofy guy. He's not even coaching the right sport. And it obviously became way more than that. Yeah,
well, Ted Lasso is a pretty specific case, but I definitely agree. The last question I have before we move on is, I worry, and we're going to talk about this when we get into the Star Wars stuff next, but another thing I worry about with this is what their plan is. And what I mean by that is, the main arc, and there are novels, but the main arc that I'm aware of was 4 novellas, all of which were probably 150 pages soaking wet. Like, I don't actually know off the top of my head. I don't know how many episodes this is going to be. Something else I wonder is, would this be a better movie? And that, I don't know. Like, I don't know that I have an answer for that, but it's something that's sitting in the back of my head right now. I think aesthetically it's making a lot of really fantastic choices, but I do worry about the overage of comedy. I think Alexander Skarsgård is going to be great.
My hot take is that some of these Apple series are just a bunch of movies strung together.
I mean, yeah, the streaming landscape, we talked about this on the show a bunch, like, is now such that you don't really get long 20-episode seasons of TV anymore because the production values are all so high. And, I think you can probably trace that back to The Mandalorian, maybe Stranger Things, like one of those, as like, okay, every episode's a movie in terms of its production value, its weight. I don't know that I love that, but yeah, this certainly will fit into the same mesh, I would imagine. Loyd, I would add this one to your list in particular. If you're sticking with Apple TV Plus, I will be watching this when it comes out. I should have in front of me when it comes out, and I don't. I believe May 16th. May 16th is when this comes out, so be on the lookout for that. And if you're not on Apple TV Plus train, I do think it's high time to get on board, especially now that Severance season 2 is fully out. Loyd, if I may, where are you at in Severance? How far along are you?
I think I'm like season 2, episode 6, maybe.
Okay.
So pretty close, getting there.
But you're confused. Which is to say you're watching Severance. I mean, that's most of it. It's one of those mystery box shows. It's great for that. Well, best of luck to you in your travels through Severance land. And yeah, any of the shows that we mentioned would be great next up if you're looking for one. Star Wars. You guys all know about Star Wars. It's that thing we talk about on this podcast like probably once a month, but it's a big deal. You know, Disney owns Star Wars. It's a very mineable IP. I shout out Drew Gooden, which I think I may have shouted Drew Gooden out recently on the show in another episode, another context. I recently watched a video of his talking about all the problems that Star Wars shows have, in particular shows that don't have enough written out to actually make a 10-episode show or even a 6-episode show, looking at you, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then he went on and talked about how great Andor is, which Andor is coming next week, I think, April 22nd, season 2 drops. Andor, I think, is widely regarded, with the exception of maybe The Mandalorian, to be Disney Plus's most successful Star Wars show. Showrunner Tony Gilroy, who runs the show for Andor, just sat down for an interview with Business Insider, and it was asked of him about it. Well, someone asked him about Star Wars horror, and in particular, whether that is an unmined genre that is going to get a project within the Star Wars universe. And he essentially said, yes, that's already happening. So we'll unpack that. But before we do, Loyd, I'm going to come over to you again. What is your current exposure to Star Wars? What is your level of fandom of Star Wars? Are you, like me, frustrated with Star Wars these days? Or are you just picking up what they're putting down?
I'm kind of the opposite of you, and I kind of like Star Wars, and I just want to see more Jedi content.
Wow, that's
I've
so
been trying to watch the new series. I haven't seen them all. I saw Obi-Wan and Acolyte, which got canceled. But no, horror is kind of scary for me, so I don't know if I'll watch this, but I am looking forward.
Yeah, so you probably sensed a conflict with me on the rise. I have said many times on this show that we need to cool it with the Jedi stuff. And you know what?
The point of making a Star Wars show without a Jedi. It's just the whole thing.
I respect the difference in opinion, and I respect the forthcomingness with that difference in opinion. I think with respect to horror in particular, it sounds like you're not a big horror person, which very understandable. No. If I were to take a hip shot guess at where horror would go, I would have to imagine the Sith are going to be involved. And, maybe that's a very one-dimensional way for me to look at this. Is the Sith are bad guys, therefore they are the scary guys. But also, have you seen Darth Maul?
So
he's a scary guy.
Yeah, Darth Maul.
Yeah, did you see Acolyte? I feel like Acolyte had some horror elements.
I think it needs to be a specific type of horror and for it to work. I know there are horror moments as an intimidation factor, but two things. One, I think this needs to be rated R. Two,
I respect that.
I think it needs to be not, if they make it like serial killer murdery, that's bad. They need to make it evil.
No.
Because
I think it's going to be the classic, the dark side is going to make you do something that you don't want to do right now.
Right. And that's
going to seep in and corrupt you.
The dark side doesn't do bad things because they're crazy. They have some kind of political or motivate or personal gain to be had. There's always a reason why they're doing it. It's not just...
Or they've experienced stuff that have had them turn to the dark side because that seems like the only option they have left.
Well, exactly. The only option. There's always a something to be had. There's never just...
Yeah, I don't know. I disagree. I think it's just power on the dark side. I think everything else, all the politics, it's just... Yeah, but I think it's all just props.
Let me hit you with a quote. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Literally Yoda talking about the dark side. And the first word of that is fear. So to me, that is a very easy to comprehend marriage. I mean, think about,
But it can't be horror movies over the last 40 years have degraded. This is a general hot take.
That is an extremely hot take. That is the hottest take I've ever heard in my life.
Peak horror movies was in the 80s where it was all psychological, where they would get in your head. One of the scariest movies I have ever watched that I had to turn off, I couldn't finish it, was the original Pet Sematary. It wasn't jump scary. It was just very twisted and uncomfortable.
Man, I thought I was going to have the biggest disagreement with Loyd with the Jedi stuff. And you're saying horror movies have degraded as a genre? That is
they were more the older
and
ones
your
were
evidence
more
is a movie
twisted.
that you didn't even watch.
They were more twisted back
You stopped halfway through.
Yeah. Your evidence, like you said, your evidence was a movie you didn't even finish watching
because it was scary.
Hold on.
Here's the thing.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I might be wrong. So I know there's a deep lore of books and stuff that expand the Star Wars universe beyond the movies and the TV shows that we've gotten. But I could have sworn, was there not like already a zombie Sith research facility sort of thing where stormtroopers were being turned into zombies? I feel like, I know zombies are a little overdone and in our What Are You Up To? We'll talk about zombies, but I feel like that was something that they could definitely mine for content too. If you really want to get into scary, like it kind of combines the whole Sith scariness and zombies.
See, I think Disney, they struck all that from canon. I don't feel like they're going to want to come too close to anything in the extended universe. Yeah, all the books and everything that got written is now part of the extended universe, and it's been formally stricken from the Star Wars canon.
That is correct. There was a Star Wars Legends novel called Death Troopers. I did just quick Google while you were talking, Nerdbomber. Undead Troopers were a thing. This was back in 2014, and yeah, I believe Loyd is correct that since then, I don't remember when exactly that happened, but it was somewhere around that time. When Disney acquired Star Wars, they were essentially like, all that is gone, and we'll pull stuff back in as we want it to. Like, they pulled Admiral Thrawn back in because he's a character, and like he was big in Ahsoka, and like that was all from books. But I think they've decided they can kind of pick and choose what comes back in, and I don't know that this has yet.
Maybe it will be Zombie Storm.
Yeah, I mean that's as logical path as any. I mean, I think there's a lot of possibility here. I mean, you think about the cave on Dagobah where Luke encountered the vision of Darth Vader. Like you think about. I mean,
that's it, right?
The Sarlacc pit's scary. Yeah, the Sarlacc pit's scary. The freaking trash compactor. Like there are horror elements in Star Wars movies to be taken and emphasized and put into different contexts. Like this is not a far jump, especially when you consider just how rich the story world is. So I have no doubt that it will be successful if done the right way. Now, one thing that I think could undermine it, looking at you, Loyd, is a Jedi showing up to save the day. I don't know about that.
Disney keeps ruining Star Wars.
I feel like it's going to be a Jedi. You spend all your time getting powerful to protect people, and then all of a sudden, your own power is turned against the people you love by the dark side. I feel like that's the bit. The Jedi is the victim.
Let's talk about the concept of I think the term is final girl in horror movies. Like your protagonist who is the one that survives, right? Yep. Do you want that person to be a Jedi?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I think I can get on board with that, in particular with respect to the psychological horror aspect that you are getting at here, where their powers are turned against.
Good old psychological.
Just like the what?
The 80s? The 80s horror movies when they were better? Yeah.
Really, I'm not even going to touch that again because that's just a crazy take to me. I mean, have you seen horror movies in the past 10 years? They're amazing.
Yeah, I don't know that you're really in this ecosystem.
There's never been a better time for horror movies.
I turned off Pet Sematary. I couldn't watch anymore. It just did it for me.
The bottom line is you like what you like, and in particular when it comes to horror, you're scared by what you're scared of, right? So like within the Star Wars universe, it feels like anything is possible, whether it's Jedi or non-Jedi or Sith or not, or zombie stormtroopers. The possibilities are endless. In particular, I think if someone like Tony Gilroy is the one doing it, he has essentially shown with what he's done with Andor so far that he has the credentials for it. I think he did imply in this interview that it's in the works and he is not the one doing it, so I guess we will have to wait and see on that. But
yeah, if you could finish Pet Sematary just so we can get an apples to apples when it comes out.
Yes. You should. And Pet Sematary, I saw the remake, by the way. Not that scary, and granted it's probably quite a bit different. But maybe I should sit down and watch it, because rather than just immediately besmirch your fear, I should give it its due. But I don't know, just based on special effects alone, I feel like we have to be ahead of where we were. Maybe that's a myopic viewpoint, though. Anyways, the other kind of mini story here is that Andor Season 2 comes out next week. I will probably be watching that as soon as it comes out, because it is that good. So as someone who tends to poo-poo the Star Wars universe these days, you can take that as a recommendation that I think Season 2 of Andor is going to be the real deal. We are going to take a pause now, take our usual break. But before we do that, we have our usual shout out, and it is to be given this week in an unusual way, in the sense that one of our producers is here with us. Loyd, thank you so much for everything that you do for the show. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks also to Stephen Keller, one of our other Patreon producers who joined us recently on the show. These two guys, of course, get the occasional guest spot on the show. They get access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, and they get this shout out every single week. So you can head over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast, grab the details there on the night level of support, which is the top level, which is the level at which they support us. There's also a Squire level of support, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, and a page level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. So again, that's patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. Get the details there. Say hi to us, say hi to Stephen and Loyd, and consider giving back to this show that hopefully you are enjoying listening to. We'll take a short break now before coming back to talk about Marathon. We'll be right back.
I'm Ryan Fonzie.
This is Cameron Hagee.
My name is Tony Giggles.
And we're three dudes who love The Legend of Zelda and love talking about The Legend of Zelda.
And if you are a Zelda fan as much as we are, then come on down and listen to your heart's content.
We have a podcast that we'd like to share with you. It's called A for No, B for Yes. We cover the Legend of Zelda series, different games chapter by chapter, and we have all kinds of theories about what we see and what we've experienced in the game.
Do you go through Wikipedia and look up stuff based on the things you see in the game to create theories to how it could link to other things in the world that we actually live in, and not the Zelda one that was the one that was created by the people that are in the world that we actually live in right now? Because if you don't, then you should watch this, because we do.
Did you guys get all that? If not, oh, you didn't. Okay. So we are A for No, B for... All right, I'll stop.
All right, we are back to talk about Marathon. This is Bungie's latest. We got a few trailers in the past week about this game. It is a sci-fi team-based extraction shooter. Runners scavenge the lost colony of Tau Ceti 4 for fortune, power, and answers to Tau Ceti's secrets. Launching September 23rd for a PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Now, Loyd, you probably saw this coming because I've been kicking these topics off all in the same way. But, you know, I myself have some Destiny experience. I, of course, have Halo experience because I grew up in the 2000s. Where are you at with Bungie in particular? Are you a big Bungie fanboy? Are you a big first-person shooter guy? Or is this all kind of Greek to you?
No, I like Bungie. I played a lot of the Halos. I played a little Destiny. I never really got into it. But I'm excited for what they have. Quiet a long time.
Yeah, they have been off the grid for a while, unless you count, like, I assume they've put out Destiny updates at a fairly decent cadence, but those were just those little mini updates that they were kind of just maintaining the base that they had. Destiny, for me, you know, I think in particular because of the point in time I was at in my life when it came out, you know, I got to Destiny fairly late, but when I did, I had the free time and the bandwidth to engage in it for all that it really was, which was really kind of grinding. And Nerdbomber, Techtic, you guys did a little bit of Destiny, I believe, as well. Is that
did.
Correct?
We got really into it, like right on launch. Like we were super invested with the beta run of it, and then we pre-ordered the whole. I think that was one of the few like midnight releases where we actually like stood in a line to get physical copies of the game, and then went home and just played it and didn't sleep. But I mean, those were the college years, so you could do that a little bit more easily.
The good old days, as they say.
But yeah, we really enjoyed it. But I think the part that I liked about Destiny, because even though it was like a squad shooter and you played with friends and there were different classes, it was more PvE. Like I knew there were player versus player modes to Destiny, but where it really thrived for me was the like basically mission-based gameplay where it's just your squad against a bunch of non-playable characters and like enemies. And that's what I enjoyed. And unfortunately for me, I don't know if Marathon is that game.
Not from the looks of it, yes. So no. I agree, first of all. I think one of the reasons that I responded to Destiny in the way that I did, and again, I don't remember, for all I know, this was at your behest that I started playing Destiny, which is another W for you. But it is very PvE focused, and like you said, there are PvP modes that I did engage with pretty heavily, in particular with Firestorm 501, former friend of the show. I played a lot of online stuff with him, but the PvE thing, it was a nice slow burn. It was a solid grind. You could see the progression, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. Marathon, I would venture to guess, based on what we are seeing here, you know, it certainly will have a story, it looks like, but it's definitely going to be more PvP focused as far as I can tell. Now, for me, you know, and we can get into the nuts and bolts of it, it looked to me, in particular from the gameplay trailer, that this was, you know, a first-person multiplayer online shooter. Like, there I guess let me turn it over to you guys. What did you see that felt unique? And Loyd, I am going to pick on you in particular because it sounds like you're a bit of a Bungie head. Was there anything here that stuck out that made you feel that you needed this immediately, or are you just back for more as a fan of Bungie's core mechanic and it's going to be tightly executed?
No, honestly, I didn't see a lot. I'd only known of Marathon from like a game pre-Halo that was very lore and story heavy, and they scrapped a bunch of it and turned it into Halo when Halo came out. So it's kind of surprising to see a game that I expected to be very story driven like Halo and then not be that game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so
it didn't seem like there's anything revolutionary in the game itself.
It feels like it's almost been a progression to this just online shooter where you started, like you said, from Halo, then it went to Destiny, which is encroaching into that online multiplayer, and then we're just fully there. So this feels like it's almost been like a linear progression to get here, which is sad. I like the stories.
Yeah, it's an interesting lineage. I wasn't aware of that history of it, I guess, that it was pulled all the way back from that time and became this. I think, Bungie, for all that they do, and, they're, again, tight first-person shooter mechanics, it's kind of what they're known for. They're also a product of their environment. And, like, games like Halo, while still being made, games like Marathon, or what at least it looks like Marathon is going to be, are the cash cows, right? These are, I don't want to call this Fortnite because it's not quite that, but and I'm sure it's going to be more tightly tuned than that, but like it is going to live and die by the PvP online play, the microtransactions of it all, the cosmetics. I think, for me, the particularly notable thing about it, whether good or bad, is just the difference in aesthetic, which I can't even really characterize. It just looks
it's definitely
very
more
different.
Like futuristic, and it's not cell shady, but it definitely has like cell shaded elements to the design. And when you compare that against obviously like Halo, I'm not going to say it's like hyper realism, but it kind of leans more, it's like fantasy hyper-realism, sci-fi hyper-realism. And like Destiny too,
right.
Like there was nothing cartoony about Destiny. It was just set in a fantasy world and setting. So yeah, it's definitely a big aesthetic departure here.
Yeah, and it's tough. Like I'm about to come across like the old person in the world. Like the brightness and the flashiness of it all, I will admit, turned me off a little bit. This is a game that, let's be honest with ourselves, like I'm probably never going, this is not my cup of tea, in particular at this point in my life. I likely will never play this game. But, I think the promise that it delivers to people who know what Bungie can do and do well is enough to, get this in the mix of shooters nowadays. And we've talked about this a lot on the show before, of like, it is a very crowded genre. In particular, the team-based shooter is currently a very crowded genre. And we saw a game fail recently and it was pulled from the marketplace. I cannot think of what the game was called. Do you guys know what game I'm talking about? It began with a C.
Oh, it was the Sony game that was out for like 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah, Concord,
thank you. I'm certainly not saying this is that, but like, I think what that game kind of proves, or at least proved at the time, is that getting into this market, which is saturated, it's a tall task. And, if anyone can do it, it's Bungie. But what you have to sit back and ask is, does it deliver enough that's new to do that? And I don't know that the answer is yes.
Here's what's kind of interesting. You always have to ask yourself who's pulling the purse strings in regards to these games being developed. Because so Bungie had developed Halo, and then it started partnering with Microsoft for the sequels, and then they kind of split off and did Destiny when they were kind of on their own, and then they partnered with Activision through that, and then in 2022, Sony Interactive had then acquired them. And so why I'm saying all this is when you think about these publishers, a lot of their constraints and resources and what they can and can't do and what the type of gameplay is a function of who's, giving them money and funding them. And so I wonder if Sony Interactive was like, no, we're not going to make money on this great story. We need it to
PvE.
be we need to be PvE, which is like.
And I mean, when you look at too the fact that there is a game like funded by Sony, you've got Concord and now this, and not saying again that they're the same game, but aesthetically and both gameplay wise somewhat similar. That is a good point to make, Techtic. There's definitely potentially like a little tie there. That said, like one of the things that Bungie does really well, and as somebody who still dabbles in the first person shooter realm and probably tomorrow night is going to have a Halo game going on, Bungie shooting mechanics are just they have it nailed. Both Halo and Destiny.
They do, yeah.
Like
They've got a great feel.
It just feels good and smooth, and gunplay feels locked in. So if there's anybody who's going to throw their hat in the ring to try to, make a dent and get a new game and IP out there, maybe they can be the ones, just on the merit of the gunplay that they've come to be known for.
Which, by the way, the marathon was a trilogy. I was looking this up while we were chatting. That came out on the Mac OS, and you weren't fighting other players. You were just fighting alien races. Like you said, it spun off to be Halo. And I think they just could have made the more I'm reading about this, the more disappointed I'm getting.
So it's interesting. Now I'm just thinking, so they developed that for Apple to be on the Mac. Then they partnered with Xbox. Then they partnered with Sony. Yeah, definitely making the rounds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about Destiny as this game that when I showed up to it, and again, I showed up late, I showed up to it thinking, first-person shooters are no longer for me. They're not a genre that I tend to enjoy. I play them once in a while. I'll give this a go because at the time, the base game was like retailing for like $10 or something, because that's kind of how their ecosystem worked. You buy the base game, then you get, the Taken King and all the other ones. I guess my point is, you're right, that like Bungie certainly has the capability. Like I remember when I first was playing Destiny, I was like, oh, you know what? I do like this genre again. I just hadn't really been playing the right, members of it. And Bungie, yeah, they certainly have that staying power. They have the ability to provide it. Now, Loyd, I was neglectful and I didn't ask. Console gamer, PC gamer, both? None?
Mostly console, Xbox, a little bit of PC, but I've always just console gamer.
Are you a Game Pass girly like these two?
I love Game Pass. I just canceled it just because I wasn't playing it enough. But then they added a bunch of really good games, and I almost just started it the next day again. So I love Game Pass. I think it's great value.
They did that because they saw that you canceled. They said, Loyd canceled. Get some great games on there.
Yeah, because Blueprints just dropped on Game Pass, right?
Ugh, don't remind me.
Yeah, I was thinking I'll cancel Game Pass. I'll play this Jedi Survivor game that came out. Jedi Fallen Order that came with my Xbox. And then they dropped the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order the day I cancel.
Yeah, that's how they get you. It's a very smart... Look, I can grumble all I want. I am definitely jealous of the Game Pass thing. That seems, like you said, like really great value, in particular for consistent play. And I don't know that I would play consistently enough. It sounds like you maybe don't either, but that would be the rub, right? But anyways, that's good to know. As I said, Marathon, September 23rd. This comes to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XS, and PC. So whether you're a console gamer or a PC gamer, this will be available for you. I believe pre-orders are available, or like wish list. You can wish list it everywhere, all that stuff. So go check it out if you haven't already. And hey, go pick up Destiny for like $2. I don't even know if you find it at GameStop. It probably costs like that much money. You still, I guess, need an online account to like do a bunch of stuff in it, but it's a really fun experience. Wanted to shout that out. That brings us to What Are You Up To Wednesday. This is the part of the show where we talk about what we've been up to, and as is tradition, when we have a guest in our virtual studio. Loyd, the floor is yours. But let us know what you have going on in your life, what you've been up to lately, and we'll sit back and listen.
Yeah, watching Severance, trying to get my head wrapped around it. Very good. Catching up on the Star Wars canon backlog. It's a grind, but somebody's got to do it. And playing my game backlog. A little Xbox Jade Empire, a little Jedi Fallen Order. Now, maybe 45 minutes a week. Yeah,
Jedi Fallen Order, and this, I don't know how long you've been a listener, but we would have talked about this at least a year ago. Jedi Fallen Order, it's a game that I own, and I tried it once, and I'm a Star Wars dude, man. I at least was a big Star Wars fan. I believe I put Jedi Fallen Order down because I found it to be too challenging, which I'm not proud of.
I don't understand how anybody plays this game.
I think the first fight I had, I was on that stupid train, right at the beginning of the game. And I got past that point, but I was also like, man, this is the very start of the game. This should not be this hard. I'm not a great gamer, but I'm I'm a gamer. I know my way around a controller, and what the heck? So
now, Loyd, this is a very important question.
Oh no, I knew this was coming. Have your moment in the sun.
How do you feel about easy mode? Are you for it? Are you against it?
Easy mode? That's a great question. I don't know. I had a lot better time with Jedi Fallen Order after I played Elden Ring, which notoriously does not have an easy mode. And just suffering in that game was what really gave me what it took to come back and try Jedi Fallen Order again. But I think
so what you're saying is it builds character.
It builds
That's what I
character.
heard.
It kind of builds character. But I don't think every game needs to be like that. I think there's a lot of good story games, and easy mode's a nice way for people to engage with it.
Yeah, I mean, then you would have been, I think, listening by this point. I recently had to put Blasphemous down because I was like, I love this game, but it's not even having a good time anymore. Like, it's just, it's making me hate myself. I love it so much. I wish I didn't have to put it down. That game also, no easy mode. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm just not a good person. I had to just walk away from it.
Yeah, I'll always rage quit before beating a game on easy mode.
See, I don't get that. I have no qualms if I'm trying to just get through a story. Like, I've invested half a game worth of gameplay into something. I want to see how the story ends, man.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of games don't let you ratchet down the difficulty halfway through. That's another consideration. It's nice when games do. I'll admit that, but I also try not to avail myself of that whenever possible. Cool. Well, again, it's great to have you on. I'll be looking forward to hearing how Fallen Order is. I do kind of want to go back to it at some point. Like, it's on the list. It's just, again, I worry for my ego going back to that game. It's gonna be humbling, I think. So.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, and let me know if you go back to it. We can suffer together.
Yeah, and good luck with Severance. Let me just say, and without getting into spoilers, no episode is going to answer all your questions, but there are some highs and some lows in terms of question answering. It's just like Lost. I keep saying that to people who I talk to Severance about. If you watched Lost, you kind of know what it's all about. They will toss you some bones every now and again, but there's always going to be stuff that you're not going to understand. I'm bringing over to me next because I'm driving the boat and I'm going to steer it in my direction. I did finish Murderbot book 4, which I believe is called Exit Strategy. Honestly, the titles all blend together. They're very generic science fiction-y titles. It was fantastic. No notes. Definitely going to be watching the show. I also do intend to read the longer form novels at some point. Nerdbomber, Techtic, Techtic, I believe you said you read at least the 5th book, which is the first actual long form novel. Is that right?
No, I realized I can't count. It was just the 4.
Word.
I have read every book except the one that just released over the summer. And that's simply just like, I have it. It's on my Kindle. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the form factor is not particularly impactful. Like, it's still going to be just the experience that it is. It's just going to be longer and less broken up into different books. So, like, I'm definitely intending to go back to that series and get these kind of, I would imagine, more self-contained experiences and then go do some. That's what I'm doing with The Expanse right now. Read one Expanse book, go read something else. Come back, read another Expanse book, go read something else. So I'm hoping to get into that flow with it, but really did enjoy it. I have now moved back into my mystery hut where I just read mystery novels, and I'm reading The Last Devil to Die, which is the 4th book in the Thursday Murder Club series. So really enjoying that so far, but I'm fairly new into it. The other thing that I want to shout out, and possibly, if not probably, stealing Techtic. Actually, I'll leave that for you guys because I know you guys are going to talk about it. I have to shout out The Pit because I've shouted it out before on this show, but it is fantastic. It just had its season 1 finale, which means you can now go and watch all 15 episodes of season 1. That's right, 15 hour-long episodes. They're all available on Max right now. If you like medical dramas, if you liked ER, if you like just good writing and a good ensemble of characters, you will enjoy this show. This show is kind of, the risk of sounding old again, this show, the kids are talking about this show right now. It's kind of a big deal on TikTok, I've heard. It has a pretty large groundswell of fandom, and one of the reasons for that, or at least what is being cited as one of the reasons for that, is that it has a 15 episode season, and it's kind of giving people that taste of what network television used to be like. It was releasing its episodes on Thursdays and had a fairly long run. So season 2 already confirmed for next January. In the meantime, I would recommend that show to just about anybody. And I will turn it over to Nerdbomber to talk about the other Max show that just premiered yesterday.
All right, so I'm going to hold off a second. But before I get into The Last of Us, I also want to talk about Shorsey, which is on the brain cell consuming scale, very vastly different than any show that we've talked about today. Very different from The Last of Us, but that is Shorsey, which is on Hulu, but is a Canadian show that has found its way to the States via Hulu. And it honestly, like, it is a hockey show. It's very like bro dude douchey. Like, sometimes you feel dumber watching an episode, but also at the end of the day, like, it's just dumb comedy, and yet the characters kind of grow on you and they're just lovable lugs. So if you like hockey, it's entertaining. I don't know. There's a season that I think came out over the summer, so we're just catching up on that now, and I'm really enjoying it. Just, again, like, sometimes you just want a half-hour comedy that you don't have to think about, and you can just like eat a leftover slice of pizza and be like, heh, every now and then. So that is what we're doing. And then, like I said, to contrast that, and this will bleed into Techtics a little bit, we watched the first episode of the new season of The Last of Us. And so before we get into this, I'm going to turn my attention over to Loyd. Loyd, what is your experience with The Last of Us, both the show, the game, etc.?
I did not play the game. I watched season 1. It's a little too dark for me. I don't know if I'll watch season 2.
Season 2.
That's fair.
It likely will not improve.
All right, I suspected not.
With regard to the darkness, probably will not improve. That is a very fair take of The Last of Us. I guess I don't know what else. It's not going to get better. It's not going to get less dark. That's kind of how zombies work. You could say, but
the interesting thing about this, so like we played the first game and then watched the first season, but we have not played The Last of Us 2 yet. So we're kind of going into the season 2 in a different situation than we were the first season, where we're kind of going in blind, like you went blind with the first season. And I'm going to be very interested to see, because I know Illeagle has played the second game, big fan, so he knows what's happening, what's coming, and we don't. And I'm very curious to see how we're going to perceive the season as it unrolls based on like our background with this game. But I will say so far, I really enjoyed the first episode. I think Dina is a very, very likable character right off the bat. I don't want to give spoilers, but yeah, that's really all I'm going to say. I think getting to see a little bit more of society was nice. I'm towing a line because if people haven't watched the first season, there's things I could say that could ruin the ending of the first season too. So yeah, overall though, I was very excited and pleased with the first episode. Definitely ready for more. We actually finished the first episode and we're like, oh, I wish there was a second, but that's
so before we turn it over to Techtic, let me just throw my 2 cents in here. And this is not, it's good to be, I can talk about it in a way that's not at all spoiler-tastic by just saying that in terms of, I think we watched the season 1 of this show, and in particular, after episode 1, I know we talked about it on the show and just talked about how fantastic it was and how it followed the game, how it made some different choices that were subtle but noticeable, but how it really was staying true to the source. What I can by and large confirm is that season 2 episode 1 is doing the same thing. It's hitting the major beats that I would expect the first episode of the season that gets into the second game. It's hitting those major beats the way that I would expect, and then it's doing some other things a little differently. It's keeping me on my toes. It's introducing some new characters that I wasn't aware of. Like it's doing great things. I have every ounce of confidence at this point that it's going to be as good.
I've heard that some of the things that I saw in the first episode are kind of out of order with how they happen in the second game. I'm not sure if you can speak to that, but I've heard a couple complaints about that, but I don't know, it seemed to flow well from where I was sitting, so.
You hit the nail on the head. So I do believe that is correct. I believe there are certain things that have happened in the first episode that you actually don't see in the game for a while, but, well, yeah, without getting into spoilers, there are reasons for that. I think the reasons are good. So I have absolutely no issue with that. I'm also kind of easy to please here. If I see things that were in the game, I just kind of point like Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, pointing at the TV in that meme, and I'm just happy the whole time. So really, really, really thrilled with it so far. I think it's going to be fantastic, and can't wait for next week.
All right, Techtic, what you got?
That leaves us with you.
All right, so I got 2 things that I want to talk about. The first one is I went on a trip to Arizona, and I did the
Sunshine State.
I did the thing that you always think of when you go to Arizona. I went to a local bar and played trivia.
Yeah. Solo?
No, I met up with some people there, but it was where I was in the southern part of Arizona, so there wasn't much to do, and I found this bar. There was a cat at the bar.
No, correction. He frantically texted me or called
Help.
me. I was like, help.
I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Where should I go? So then I'm Googling while he's in the car driving. I'm like, here's a bar.
And there was a cat at the bar, so it worked out good. It was interesting, the dinner situation at that bar, because they didn't serve food, but a guy pulled his pickup truck up in the parking lot in front and was making hamburgers out of it, so that was cool.
I don't know, man. I don't know about that part.
I ate a pickup truck burger. I'm still here. It's fine.
Okay. You survived.
So that was a neat experience. Like I said, I've just to go across the country and see another area.
You didn't see a cactus, though.
It was 95 degrees, which was crazy this time of year. But yeah, that was neat. And then the other thing is we watched the Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. And this movie was heartfelt, but it was a bit of a bummer. I thought it was going to be a little bit more fun. It was not.
This is also a shout out to Illeagle because you gave me this book for my birthday or Christmas because the author of this book also wrote Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which is a fantastic novel as well. Both of them were really good books. Would highly recommend.
Yeah, just be ready to cry. I looked over at Nerdbomber and I was like, I almost teared up there. And then she just looks at me deadpan and goes, yeah, I read the book already. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
psycho.
Well, I just, I Googled while you were talking, and it starts, the like Google little like teaser for the movie starts with A.J. Fikry's wife has died. So that's right away it's not an upper,
I mean, it's one of those, and this author, I think it's Gabrielle Zevin, she writes books that are very introspective of the human condition, sort of uplifting in that way, and how like we're all connected in community, but also kind of a bummer. Like that's how I would describe both of the books that I've read. Like uplifting, but a bummer simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean, that's a genre of mine, so I likely will watch this or at least read the book eventually. Techtic, every part of Arizona is the southern part of Arizona. That's just a fact about Arizona. You mentioned you went to the southern part. It's the whole thing, right?
No, like
I mean, there's really no...
The southern part of the state.
It's all the southern part. There's no northern part of Arizona. It's all just desolate. Sorry, I'm being mean to Arizona. Sorry, Arizona. I just, I went there once. I went to the Grand Canyon. It was grand. That's probably in the northern part of the state. I actually don't know. Not a geography major, but hopefully you had a nice time.
Well, I find the landscape a lot more fascinating as you approach Colorado, basically. Otherwise, it's just
Colorado. Got nothing but nice things to say about Colorado, by the way. Been there once. Really something. Also, New Mexico. Arizona's fine. I don't know why I'm slamming on Arizona. It doesn't deserve that. That brings us to the end of the episode. We thank you all for joining us. We, in particular, thank Loyd for being here with us. Loyd, any final plugs or shout-outs or anything you want to say to the folks at home?
Yeah, go check out the video Mandalore Gaming did on the Marathon series and be sad about the new game. That's my shout-out. Thanks for having me.
He has instructed everyone to be sad, so go ahead and do that. I should also shout out our Blue Sky handles. I usually do that every episode, and I've been neglectful this time around. I am at OW86.bsky.social. We have at OW Nerdbomber.bsky.social, at Techtic.bsky.social, in our main show account at OnlineWarriors.bsky.social. Check us out there. Hit us up on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review. Hit us up on Patreon if you want to be like Loyd, be a generally cool guy. You can head over there. Check us out there as well. Otherwise, just keep keeping on. Enjoy your spring. Keep enjoying your spring. Stay safe and keep on podcasting.